Okay, so today we're diving into a case that I know has been making the rounds online, and one that honestly I found myself thinking about quite a bit since we decided to cover it, and that's the disappearance of Lars Mittank.
Yeah, and it's one of those cases, that really gets under your skin because it doesn't make sense. Like on the surface, it seems so straightforward. You have security footage of this guy, you know,
Yeah.
then he just vanishes, and it's like, how is that even possible?
Right, and it's not like he's in some remote wilderness area. This is an airport in Bulgaria. Like, there are people everywhere, there are cameras everywhere, and he just, poof, gone.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to try to unpack today. The known facts, the timeline, the theories, and just try to get a sense of what might have been going through his mind in those last few moments,
Yeah.
before he disappeared.
Yeah, because there are definitely some really bizarre details to the story, and I think we need to start with kind of setting the scene. Who was Lars Mittank? What was he doing in Bulgaria? And what were the circumstances that led up to this whole thing?
So Lars was a 28-year-old German guy, pretty average by all accounts, enjoyed sports, liked soccer. He was on vacation with a group of friends in Varna, Bulgaria, a popular tourist destination, on the Black Sea. And the trip seemed to be going fine at first. You know, they were having fun, enjoying the beach, hanging out.
Until things took a bit of an ugly turn, right? I mean, there was some sort of altercation with another group of guys, I think maybe over a soccer rivalry or something like that.
Yeah, that's what we've been able to piece together from the reports. It seems like there was a disagreement. Maybe some trash talk escalated into a minor fight. Nothing too serious, but Lars ended up with a ruptured eardrum.
Ouch. Yeah, that's gotta hurt. And I'm guessing that probably put a damper on the rest of the trip.
Definitely. And it also meant that he couldn't fly back home with his friends. The doctor advised him against it because of the ear injury. So his friends had to leave without him, and he had to stay behind until his ear healed enough to fly.
So he's stuck in a foreign country by himself, injured, and probably feeling pretty isolated at this point, which is, I mean, that's already a pretty stressful situation, right?
Absolutely, and that's kind of where things start to get really strange. He checks into a cheap hotel near the airport, which makes sense.
Yeah.
He's got to be close to the airport for when he can fly. But then he makes this really disturbing phone call to his mother.
Yeah, this phone call is like straight out of a horror movie. I mean, he's whispering, he's telling his mom that people are after him, that he's in danger, that he needs to disappear. He even asks her to cancel his credit cards.
Right, and here's the thing. There's no evidence that anyone was actually after him. No reports of anyone following him, no threats, no suspicious activity. It seems like this fear was all in his head.
Which, I mean, doesn't make it any less real for him, right? If you're genuinely terrified, it doesn't matter if there's an actual threat or not. The fear is still real.
Exactly, and this paranoia, this intense fear, it seems to have just taken over. And it's really the turning point in the whole story, because from this point on, everything he does is driven by this fear.
So then we come to the day he's supposed to fly home. He goes to the airport, and there's security footage of him walking into the terminal. And he seems okay, like relatively calm. It's almost like he's a different person from the guy who was frantically whispering to his mother on the phone the night before.
And he even sees the airport doctor. They have a conversation, and the doctor notes that Lars is anxious and paranoid, which again lines up with what he told his mother. But the weird thing is he refuses to take any medication the doctor offers him.
Which is so strange. I mean, if you're feeling that freaked out, wouldn't you want to take something to calm down? I mean, wouldn't you want some kind of relief?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But he refuses, and we can only speculate why. Maybe he didn't trust the doctor. Maybe he thought the medication was part of some kind of plot against him. I mean, who knows? But it definitely adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
And then comes the moment that's been replayed countless times online, in those grainy security camera videos. Lars is sitting in the airport waiting area, and then suddenly he just bolts up and starts running.
He leaves all of his stuff behind, his bags, his passport, everything, and he just sprints through the terminal, out the doors, across the parking lot.
And he keeps going. He climbs over a fence that surrounds the airport and disappears into the woods, and that's the last anyone ever saw of him.
And it's not like these woods are some vast, unexplored wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
This is a relatively small area close to a busy airport. I mean, they searched it extensively, and they found nothing, no trace of him.
So how do you explain that? I mean, how does a guy just vanish into thin air in broad daylight, especially when you have video footage of him right up until the moment he disappears?
Right, and that's where the theories come in. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation over the years, and really the theories kind of fall into a few main categories. There's the idea that he was experiencing some kind of mental breakdown, a psychotic episode, maybe triggered by the stress of the situation, the injury being alone in a foreign country.
And that would explain the paranoia, the fear, the sudden flight response, but it doesn't necessarily explain why he's never been found, right? I mean,
Yeah.
even if he was disoriented, even if he wandered off somewhere, you'd think there would be some sign of him.
True, and that's one of the weaknesses of that theory. And then there's the theory that he was actually in danger, that maybe someone was after him and that he was running for his life.
Which would fit with what he told his mother, but again, there's no evidence to support that. No witnesses, no threats, no indication that anyone was following him.
And as we mentioned before, this is an airport. It's a public place. There are cameras everywhere. It's not easy to just grab someone and make them disappear without anyone noticing.
So that theory, while it's definitely intriguing, it's also pretty hard to reconcile with the facts. And then there's this third theory that he might have witnessed something he shouldn't have seen, something that put him in danger and made him run.
Yeah, this one is always popular in these kinds of cases. The idea that he stumbled upon some criminal activity or something illegal,
Yeah.
and that he became a target because of it.
But again, we're back to the same problem.
Yeah.
There's no evidence to support this, and it's all speculation. And I think that's what's so frustrating about this case is that there are all these theories, but none of them really fit perfectly, and we're left with more questions than answers.
Exactly, and that's part of what makes this case so compelling. It's this unsolved mystery, this puzzle that we can't seem to crack. And it's also a reminder that sometimes things happen that we just can't explain. You know, there are limits to our understanding, and sometimes we have to accept that.
And I think it's also important to remember the human side of the story. You know, this isn't just some internet mystery. This is a real person who vanished and left behind a family who still has no answers.
Absolutely, and you know, his mother has been searching for him all these years, never giving up hope. And that's something we should keep in mind. You know, behind all the theories and the speculation, there's a real human tragedy here.
Yeah, and so as we wrap up this deep dive into the disappearance of Lars Mittank, I keep coming back to that image of him running through the airport. You know, he's obviously terrified, he's desperate, he's running from something or maybe towards something, we don't know, but whatever it was powerful enough to make him abandon everything and just disappear.
And it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
you know, what would it take to push you to that point? What kind of fear, what kind of desperation would make you do the same thing?
Because I think on some level, this case resonates with all of us, you know, that fear of the unknown, the idea that something could happen that could just completely upend our lives and leave us with no answers.
It's a reminder that the world is a complex and often unpredictable place, and that sometimes even in the most ordinary of settings, the most extraordinary things can happen.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the baffling case of Lars Mittank. It's a story that I'm sure will stick with us and with all of you out there. And maybe the next time you find yourself in an airport waiting area, you'll take a second look at the people around you and wonder what stories they might be carrying and what mysteries might be hidden in their eyes.
And who knows, maybe someday someone will come forward with new information that will finally shed light on what happened to Lars Mittank. But until then, the mystery remains. And I think, in a way, that's kind of the point. You know, it's a reminder that there are still things in this world that we just can't explain.
And sometimes the not knowing is what makes it so compelling.
Exactly.
Thanks again for listening.